Hello Year 11. Right, I'm going to talk you through, as promised, the poetry literature mock. I'll take you through a sample essay. Your job is to look at this essay and compare it to your own work and then try and write in the similar style, because this is a pretty good essay really, so we can learn a lot from it. Right, before we do, just a reminder of the sort of targets that we were setting for your actual mocks. Remember, we had 5, and I've added one more since then. The 5 that we had were number 1, have a better quality of topic sentence and concluding sentence. Which compare by ideas about conflict, not just method. So we'll look at that. How do the paragraphs open and end? Have we got a sense of really engaging with the ideas of the poem, not just saying both use alliteration to create horrors of war, something like that. Right. Secondly, analyse quotations in greater depth, picking out and commenting on the effects of key words. Thirdly, add a greater sense of depth to your point by discussing the ideas about conflict in the poem in more detail. Fourthly, select better quotations, which have a lot to say about them. Fifthly, have a more sustained focus on comparison between the two poems, compare them in more depth and detail, rather than just writing about one then writing about the other. The one I've added is number 6, include an evaluative conclusion which comments on tone, particularly important for A star, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so get the essay in front of you if you can, otherwise just get ready to take some notes, and we'll see where these targets happen in this essay. Okay, so the title is Compare the Ways the Poets Present Feelings of Confusion in Belfast Confetti and One Other Poem from Conflict. Key word here is, or key idea, feelings of confusion. And be careful, because in exams sometimes people just see the name of the poem, just think, oh, I'll compare that poem with something else that I know, and miss the fact that you need to be writing about feelings of confusion and focusing your ideas and planning around that idea particularly. Let's go. So here's our first topic sentence. In both Belfast Confetti and Out of the Blue, the poets present innocent civilians and how they are affected by a conflict, feeling confused amidst the chaos. So is that a good topic sentence? Yes, because it compares by idea, and the idea is that both present the confusion of innocent civilians and how they're affected. So there's the idea. What's it got to do with confusion? Well, they've thought, okay, so who's confused in the poems? Okay, in both these poems, it's not soldiers who are feeling confused, like you might argue with Bayonet Charge or Come On, Come Back, but it's actually the civilians, and that's the idea that they're choosing to guide this paragraph. In Belfast Confetti, the extended metaphor of punctuation is used, creating a fragmented structure in the irregularity, so portraying chaos. Right, so here you've got the a more specific point for Belfast Confetti. Nice use of language technique, the extended metaphor of punctuation, where it refers to things like asterisks, full stops, that sort of thing in the poem. It uses the idea of punctuation and language to explore confusion. If you don't understand that, go back and look at the poem and see what I mean. This is nice because it comments on structure, fragmented structure, and the irregularity. So it means the structure's not very sort of regular and not much sort of a clear, regular rhythm. It's irregular, and she's saying that this makes it seem chaotic. So it's mentioning something about the structure, but saying what the effect is. Carson uses the extended metaphor such as, in the quotation, the explosion itself and asterisks on the map. Just note the way that the slash there is used to show that it goes to the next line. You've got quote marks and you've got the slash to show that you're breaking over 2 lines with this quotation. Right, and now we're into this bit about analysing quotation in depth. Look at this. This shows how the explosion is like an asterisk, reaching outwards, causing devastation, not just in the middle, like an asterisk sign, like that. Okay, so that's the idea that it's sort of exploring. Okay, and it's explaining that, isn't it, in detail. It shows the impact of conflict and how widespread it is. The use of enjambment also breaks up the poem. So we're going on to another point here about the enjambment, because the enjambment is here, the explosion itself, an asterisk on the map. That idea goes from that line into that line. So that is enjambment. It's going between there and there. for it to make sense. If the line ended with the explosion, it wouldn't make sense. And so the analysis is commenting on that as well. That's really good. So it's not just talking about the words, it's also talking about the structure of the line. And it also goes on to say what that does. The enjambment breaks up the poem, creating a sense of confusion with sentences running over multiple lines. So we're back to confusion. See how it's linked to the title here? It shows the impact it has on innocent people. Back to the idea of innocent people, civilians, feeling out of place as they're all affected. This is also highlighted when he says, what is my name, where am I coming from, where am I going, a fusillade of question marks. Can you see how they've chosen another idea which uses, another quote then, they've linked to another quote which uses enjambment, and then they've analysed that, so they're linking to quotes elsewhere in the text. They're developing their analysis, they're analysing quotations in great depth by picking out the comments, picking out and commenting on key words, but also linking to other texts, linking to other quotes in the text. Alright, so note that down. If you want at this point to stop the video and practice doing that, then do so. Otherwise, just carry on. But be careful that this video doesn't become overwhelming in all the amounts of stuff it's going to tell you. The repeated use of question marks adds to the confusion as it affects their ability to even think, and they ask simple questions. So it's thinking about, okay, lots of questions, but they're simple questions. This is the end where they're being questioned by the army. It could also suggest an interrogation where everyone is questioned and the repeated questions seem quite violent and forced upon them. It's also as if the civilians don't understand why they're being affected, as they're all innocent. So all of this is just developing the ideas about conflict that you get from the quotation. The fusillade of question marks suggests an assault on the innocent people, because fusillade means kind of a series of sort of explosions or an attack, ending the poem abruptly. That means very quickly. That's a nice way to put it. And also your comment on the ending, which again is talking about things like structure. We're talking about structure. Openings and endings mean you're talking about structure. It shows how both soldiers but also innocent civilians, that bit doesn't quite make sense, I don't think, but just goes to show that you're not expected to write a perfect essay here. The examiners understand that you're writing under timed conditions. Anyway, there we are. We're back to the idea of innocent civilians. So you see how the concluding sentence of this bit also goes back to the idea of innocent civilians, which was where we started. Now we're comparing. Okay, similarly, brilliant word to use to compare. In Out of the Blue, Armitage uses dramatic monologue in order to explore the impact of conflict on those innocent civilians. Dramatic monologue is the idea of a poem coming from one character's sort of perspective. It's their thoughts which extend over a long poem. The devastation and confusion when he writes, a bird goes by, the depth is appalling, appalling. So they've chosen a quote again. Notice as well the expression doesn't quite work there, but they get away with it. It's fine. It's an exam essay. It doesn't need to be perfect. You're allowed to make little sort of mistakes in expression. The expression is generally very good. Devastation and confusion. Nice word choice. Okay, they then go and examine the quote again, analyse the quote. It shows how the speaker is feeling and how terrified they are. The juxtaposition, which is a great word meaning the strong contrast between the bird, who is free, which is free, and the trapped people, adds a more intense way of portraying their emotions. So it's going to the quote and thinking, right, what's interesting about this quote? The use of the idea of a bird shows the contrast between the bird who's free and the trapped people and makes it more intense. So they look at the quote, they find something interesting about the quote, and they say what the effect is. Adds a more intense way of portraying their emotions. The use of the bird also shows how high up they are. Can you see how they're not letting that idea go? They're going further with that. You can overdo this. You don't want to write half a page about the bird, but this is good. It's finding several ideas coming out of the one image of the bird. And the terror of not being able to do anything. The repetition of the word appalling, so they found something else from the quote here. Really doing this, commenting on in great depth on the quotation. Adds to the way they must be confused about why them. It links to, see how they've again linked to another quotation, you have picked me out, which is another quote in the poem, as it shows that they don't understand why they are there and why they have to be affected by the conflict. Both poems show that that conflicted should be conflict isn't just restricted to the battlefield, and that these events can affect innocent people as well. So can you see how you've still got this strong sense that we started with about innocent civilians here? So that's in your topic sentence, and that's in your sort of concluding sentence also, which comments on both poems at the end. So we've started with this identifying a linked idea. We've written about one poem. We found the similarity here, and we started writing about the other poem, and then we've finished with a comparison of what they both suggest. Okay, so that's your comparative sort of conclusion. The next one I won't go through in detail because it does many of the same things. Okay, but what I will do, I mean, you should read it yourself. You can always pause that and read it through and see where they're also analysing quotations in details. Similarly, again, and etc., etc. Good use of language, past participle verbs, having that knowledge of the language techniques that are used, not just saying it uses this word, but giving it its technical name, participle verbs, juxtaposition, those sorts of things. Anyway, you read that through. I'll just bring your attention then to this last point about the evaluative conclusion, which comments on tone. Let's have a look at what I mean there. So here the writer says, overall, so that introduces the conclusion, I would say that Out of the Blue is more powerful in showing the impact of conflict on innocent victims. I have to say, you've lost a bit of sense of confusion there. It would be good to go back to confusion more strongly. It's almost as if the essay has turned into an essay about innocent victims, so you do be aware of that. It wouldn't greatly affect your grade, but it would a bit. But the point is, it evaluates by sort of giving an opinion. Out of the Blue is more powerful in showing the impact of conflict on innocent victims. Belfast Confetti presents a more chaotic view, showing more destruction. See how we're really, really comparing the poems here. Whereas, great word to compare, Out of the Blue is more slow-moving, presenting a more intense feeling of the tragic loss as people slowly watch the destruction before their eyes. Whereas, I've got too many whereases here, but it doesn't matter. It's the students have written loads in this essay, probably more than you'd expect actually in an essay of this amount of time. But so you can forgive them for these odd lapses of expression. In Belfast Confetti, everything happens more quickly, almost as if it happens all at once. Out of the Blue seems, excuse me, to have a more sombre tone, sombre meaning sort of serious and sad, showing the consequences of conflict on the innocent people who are affected. It needs a touch more of an idea about confusion in here. Nevertheless, it does really work as an essay. It would get a high mark in the top band, really. It's sustained, it's detailed. They've been advised to bring a bit more detail and depth into the comparison, maybe try and find a bit more to say about the comparison. I would also add, good to stick to the question, stick to the idea of confusion. But on the whole, that's a very strong essay. So now look again at the model, look again at this, the way this is written. Think about the things you've noted down, think about the strengths of this answer, and try and do the same thing in your own essay writing from this point. Right, there we go.